Hello and welcome to Mystery and Middle Grade. Today I'm going to be talking about some of my June reads. Last month I did all of my May reads in one video and it ended up being quite long. So I decided to divide it up this time and I'm going to go ahead and post the books that I read in the first half of the month. So with that said, let's turn the page and get started. June has been a really good month of reading for me, so I have 10 or 11 books to share with you today just from the first half of the month. And we'll go ahead and organize them by the mysteries first. And then I have one book that is not a mystery or middle grade, and I'll put that in the middle. And then we'll do middle grade at the end. So I do have only one of the books in a physical form today, so you'll be seeing digital covers. And because I don't have the books to refer to, you might notice me looking at my notes on my computer today, and that's just how it's gonna be. So the first one was Dissection of a Murder by Jo Murray. This is a debut thriller by a woman who was formerly a barrister in England. And so she starts out this with a little description of the different ways that the English court system works. And that is a nice introduction to the story because there's refers to that in the story. Main character is a woman who's a younger barrister. She is assigned her very first murder case, murder trial. She is not quite sure that she is qualified yet to do this trial, but the person who's been arrested specifically requested her. She worked on a different case for him previously, and then she discovers that the prosecutor is going to be one of the best prosecutors in their court system, and it happens to be her husband. So she has to really negotiate how she's going to work that in order to make the court case run as it's supposed to, protect the privacy of her client, and so on. So it's quite a dance that she has to perform for that. So she's quite nervous about that. The case does involve the murder of a prominent judge. So that makes it a more high profile case as well. A lot of the story is background information before the trial starts, but also it does change points of view, some points in the story. And there is a point of view, it's an anonymous person. So it kind of weaves back and forth. It tells the story a little bit of her life leading up to being in this position. It tells the story of leading up to her romance and marriage with her husband. So all that is woven into the story. And this is a thriller, so it does have some twists that are very well done. I will say that one of the big twist is not a twist that I particularly enjoy in my story. And so I enjoyed the book more until we got to that point. And then the ending wasn't so great for me. But for people who don't mind this kind of twist in their books, I think this is going to be a fast-paced, page-turning thriller that a lot of people will be reading. So that's Dissection of a Murder, and I hope that it works well for you all the way to the end. Next, we have Guilty by Definition by Susie Dent. This happens to be another debut English author. This book came out at the end of 2025, and she is a media personality in England. She's long appeared on a game show in a section of it that has to do with words and dictionary questions because she is a lexicographer. And so she works on dictionaries and word usage and all of that. And this story has a main character who has that kind of job too. The main character is Martha. She is on the youngish side, maybe 30-ish, and she has come to be assigned to be the editor of the Clarendon English Dictionary in Oxford, England. Now, there's a little bit, she worries about a little bit of office tension because there are people who've worked here for years and were hoping for the promotion and didn't get it. So she has a little bit of uncertainty about how they're going to receive her. And then that's kind of put into the background because they start receiving anonymous letters that point back to a disappearance of Martha's sister. I think it was 16 years before. It was quite some time before, and the mystery of what happened to her never solved. She just disappeared. So they don't know if she kind of ran off to form a new life for herself, if something nefarious happened to her. The family has never known. Martha has moved back into her family's home. Her father is also connected into this academic kind of word-related community, but he's very prickly and he doesn't really want to talk to her. He's become reclusive since his wife died a few years back, and so Martha doesn't have a great relationship with her father. So they're trying to figure out now who is sending these anonymous messages. How are they clues to what happened to her sister? The other staff in the dictionary office are also receiving some letters, and they find out that some other people who were connected to her sister's life have received letters as well. And so Martha and her staff are set to investigate. The staff there did know Charlie, the sister, because she was like an intern there while she was doing her academic studies. Charlie was super, super brilliant in the area of words as well and ancient literature. It was a little slow going for me in the beginning as the whole thing was set up, getting to know who all the characters were and what the situation was. And then about halfway through the book, it picked up, and from there on, it was really in. But it was so well written. There's a lot of puzzles in there. I didn't stop and try to kind of figure out the puzzles, but I would say that some people might like to do that if you are a word person, and that it was fun at the end. Now there is kind of a sober atmosphere to this book. Martha is sad about her sister. She's worried about her job. So this is not like a lighthearted, fun escapade. It is a serious book with kind of a sober atmosphere, and so that you need to know going into it too and expect that it's not going to be a lighthearted romp. But it was super well written, and there is a sequel in the works. So that's Guilty by Definition. Next, I read Ironwood by Michael Connelly. Michael Connelly is an auto-read author for me. I have read all of his novels through all of his different series and protagonists. This happens to be the second book in a new series he has called the Catalina series. It's set on Catalina Island off the coast of California, and such a small island that they don't normally have a lot of crime, so they just have one detective assigned to the island. The detective sergeant is named Stillwell. He's called Still in the book, and he has been on the island for a couple of years now, and even though he was sent here against his will, he has grown to really enjoy island life, and he has formed a community. He has a girlfriend, and so he feels like he's settled here. So he, in the very beginning of the book, starts out with a very rushed, frenetic situation where he and two of his deputies are staking out at the island airport because they've been given a tip that a drug plane is going to be making a drop off. And things go terribly wrong in this situation, and both of those deputies are shot. The one is killed. And the other one, she's really not able to speak to anybody and explain what happened. Because Stillwell was present for this event, the his boss on the mainland tells him that he can't be investigating the case. So he's kind of been sidelined. Now, if you're familiar with Michael Connelly characters, you will know his characters don't just sit aside quietly. And so he decides that he's going to look into things anyway. While he's cleaning out some lost and found items because they need to use that room, and he finds a backpack that has been left there. And he just looks into what happened, who left it, and that traces him back to a cold case series of murders that is actually in the hands of Renee Ballard. Renee Ballard is another one of Connelly's characters from his other books. She has her own series. She sometimes intersects with the Harry Bosch character. And so Renee Ballard becomes part of this mystery as well. So especially if you've read the Renee Ballard mysteries before, you're going to want to pick this one up. And I'm looking forward to the next one in the series. They are always milkshake books for me. I just slurp them down. The writing is not flowery. It's pretty matter of fact. So the stories gallop ahead quickly, and there's a lot of action in there, but there's some character development in there too. So they're just a really fun book, and I always try to get myself on the list for the Michael Connelly books as soon as I can when I know they're being published. So that one was a win for me. I really did enjoy it, even better than the first book featuring Still. Next, we're going to switch gears and do something super silly and fun. This book is called The Pie and Mash Detective Agency by J.D. Brinkworth. J.D. Brinkworth is a debut author who happens to be a husband and wife duo working together. The main characters are Jane and Simon, and they decide to name their detective agency after their last names, Pie and Mash. They are a dating, cohabiting couple, and neither one of them is satisfied in their current career, and so they have decided to take a kind of a recreation class in becoming a private investigator. Now, these two characters, they're silly. Especially Simon, he's silly. He makes silly jokes all the time. He's very concerned with what his detective wardrobe is going to be. And so he gets like trench coats for them. And there's just this element of fun. You see them like hiding out in the bushes sometimes. And there's just some hilarity involved in this story. And the tone of the book is just like slapdash comedic. So it's loads of fun. All the students in the class are assigned a case from the teacher's past to reinvestigate and give a report on, just to kind of see how they'll do with an investigation. But when he gets to Jane and Simon, he's gone through all of his past cases he has to hand out, so he assigns them a current case that connects to past cases. So the current case is a missing woman named Nellie Thorne. And you do see the situation where her boyfriend reports her missing, and the reaction of the constables taking the report is also on the silly side, because they say, oh, it's another one of those. It's another Nellie. And of course, the boyfriend has no idea what they're talking about. But it turns out over the past 50 years, there have been 5 incidents of a woman named Nellie Thorne who has gone missing. And nobody's ever solved the case. Nobody's ever found a missing Nellie. And nobody knows, is this like some kind of ghost of Nellie that keeps returning? How is this even possible? Are they connected? Are they not connected? And so we find out that the leader of the class, the teacher of the class, was the investigator on one of the past Nellie Thorne cases. And so part of the storyline goes back to his past and shows his investigation, and then he also keeps coming into the story too in the current investigation. So Simon and Jane go off to try to solve this mystery of Nellie Thorne. And of course, the teacher doesn't expect them to solve it because nobody has solved this. But Jane and Simon are determined to do so anyway. And it's just a fun romp. So you can't take it seriously. You have to go into it with the idea that you're going to be reading a silly book. If you want something that is going to be serious, you're really going to maybe roll your eyes and not appreciate it for what it is. So it was a fun book to mix in among these other darker, more serious titles with the serious tone that I've been reading. And so it was a lot of fun for me. And I will be watching for the second book in this series when it comes out. Okay, next is my book that is not a mystery and it's not middle grade. It is kind of a time travel fantasy with some romance. And this is called The Once and Future Queen by Paula Lafferty. Now, if that title rings a bell and makes you think of The Once and Future King, which is a book about King Arthur, that is on purpose. So this character, Vera, in the modern day is 22. She's grieving her boyfriend who died. She is at a loss about what to do with her future. She's working as a serving person at her parents' cafe, kind of at a castle tourist spot. And then she finds out when a mysterious stranger arrives and knows who she is. She finds out that she is actually Queen Guinevere. And what happened is there was a moment of crisis back in the time of King Arthur when Queen Guinevere was in mortal peril. And the only way that Merlin, who is the stranger, could save her was to kind of take her life force and bring her forward in time. And she became a baby again and grew up in the care of her adoptive parents. And now he's come to take her back to Camelot because since that time when the original bad situation happened, Camelot has been in distress and magic in the kingdom is starting to dwindle. And Queen Guinevere held the key to what happened in her memories, but she doesn't remember anything from her life back there. So that's all kind of the setup. And then she does go back in time. She has to develop a relationship with King Arthur again because he remembers his Guinevere, but she doesn't remember anything about him. And also she becomes buddies with Lancelot. And then she goes through learning all things about life there, like jousting and so on. But she's also, of course, still has her modern sensibilities. So there's that tension and conflict in the story, as well as how is she going to get her memories back. The book is quite long. I really super enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. Now, this is going to be a series, or at least there's going to be a follow-up. I don't know if I'll read the follow-up or not because this story kind of came to enough of a completion that I felt satisfied. And the next story obviously is not going to contain all of those same elements of her newly adapting to her environment. And so I'm just not sure if I'll be as into it. So we'll see when the time comes if I'll pick up the sequel. But if you would like a time travel story, and if you like King Arthur stories that have a retelling, you will definitely want to pick this one up. It was lots of fun. That's The Once and Future Queen. Next, I have another book, and I put this one in order right after the other one because it is also about a queen. This one's called The Queen's Granddaughter by Diane Zoller. Now, she is not a debut author, unlike some of the others that I've talked about today. She is written numerous middle grade books, but this happens to be the first one I've read by her. And I may just look into her backlist titles because I really enjoyed this one. The main character here is named Blanca. She is a princess of Castile in Spain. Now, her parents had a daughter who's married, and then she has an older sister, and then she has a couple of younger brothers as well. But Blanca is 12, and they learn that her grandmother is coming to visit. Now, her grandmother is not just a regular old grandmother. Her grandmother is Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine. Now, Queen Eleanor is one of the wealthiest and most important people during this historical time. And this story is based on things that really happened with Blanca, who's also known as Blanche, and with Queen Eleanor. But the author has really taken some of these facts, the kind of bare bone facts that are known, and developed a fully blown and believable and fun story around them. So when Eleanor of Aquitaine, who is the grandmother, the queen's mother, arrives, she is to take the princess, the older Blanca's older sister, to France to be betrothed to the young Prince of France, who will one day be king. And she stays for a period of time. Now, Blanca is kind of she's the person who gets into all sorts of messes and scrapes and doesn't follow decorum and doesn't like to be dressed in the proper finery and is always getting into rambunctious scrapes. And so her family's really worried about how she's going to make an impression on the queen. Meanwhile, her older sister, the one in the middle who is going to be chosen to be the princess in France, is she's very good at decorum and all of that. Well, it turns out Queen Eleanor thinks that Blanca is going to be a better fit for the role of the future Queen of France, and so she chooses her. And she takes her on a journey. So you can see on the cover they're going on a journey from their place in Spain to where they need to go in France. And along the way, they have multiple exciting adventures. So you really get to know Blanca. You really get to know more about the queen. There is a friend of Blanca's who goes along, whose name is Suna, and she is what we now would call a Muslim. And that also is a theme in here about how they're treated, because this is the time of the Crusades. And the Queen Eleanor's son is Richard the Lionhearted. And Eleanor went on crusades. This is the time of kind of trying to force Christianity on the Muslim countries. And so there is tension built into the story because of that. But the two girls, they have a connection that's important for the story because she gets to have a friend with her. We get to see their interactions in the story. And the queen is just a really interesting character as well. I loved it. I gave this one a 5-star as well, and I really think that it's one of the best middle grades I've read so far this year. It'll probably be on my list of top middle grade books when I get to the end of the year. So that's The Queen's Granddaughter, and I highly recommend that for people who like historical fiction and spunky girls who don't necessarily conform to the expected ways of living back then. The next book I have is the first book in a new series called The Shrew Detective. This one's called The Case of the Pilfered Pearls, and it's by Margie Preus. This is a fun, short, slim book. Preyas won the Newbery Honor for her book, The Heart of a Samurai, which I have not read, but I had such a fun time with this one that I think I may go back and read that one, although it's obviously going to be quite different in tone. A samurai versus a story about an animal detective. So Minerva, the shrew, has a little house in the countryside, and she one day has her cousin who comes frantically to her door and begs her to come help with a case because it's just putting everybody's life in peril and she has to come today. It can't wait. And Minerva is surprised when her cousin leads her out of the countryside and right into a house. Minerva is not a house shrew. She does not want to be in the house and she's not comfortable there. But she finds that the situation is the woman of the house has lost a pearl necklace. And she has decided that there are rodents in the house and they must be the culprits. And so she's called in an exterminator. And so that's the big rush on this. She needs, Minerva needs to find out who took the necklace and get it back to the owner so that the extermination does not happen, because there's lots of different like mouse families and other creatures who live in the walls of this house. So Minerva gets to interact with all of them. She interviews them and it's very, very fun. There's also a cat in the house and you get to learn a lot about shrews, the tiny little animals. They have a very, very high metabolism, so they have to be eating all of the time. So you get to hear lots of things about what she needs to eat, and it's just delightful, fun character. And the animals that she interacts with are also fun, and I just am looking forward to this series continuing. It is just a really fun animal mystery for kids on the younger age of middle grade, but of course, something that's this fun can easily be enjoyed by kids who are at a higher reading level and just want something to devour. So that was The Shrew Detective, #1, The Case of the Pilfered Pearls. Next, we have The Mastermind's Trap. This is The Last Chance Academy, #2 by Debbie Machiko Florence. I recently reviewed in another video the first book in this series and really enjoyed it. The first one was nominated for a Juvenile Edgar Award. And so it was fun, but it ended kind of without everything being resolved. So I did want to read the second one. The main character is named Meg. She goes to a boarding school and you find out all the background with that with the first one. In the first book, she and her friends earn a trip over their school break, by solving the clues and mysteries set up in that first book. So this second book starts out with that trip. Now, Meg really, really wanted to win that trip because she wants her father to be the chaperone. She really wants to reconnect with him. Her mother died a couple years ago, and since then she's felt like her father has been disconnected from her. He's been traveling for work, and she had to stay for a period of time with her aunt that she really doesn't get along with, and she feels her aunt is mean. And then at the last minute, her father says he can't be the chaperone after all. The aunt is going to be the chaperone. So Meg is really disappointed about that, but she and her friends go off on this adventure instead of going off with her father. So the first part of the book is about what happens while they're on this trip, and then they do go back to the boarding school, and it ends in the boarding school setting again. I will say that the reason I wanted to read this one right away is because the mystery wasn't completely wrapped up after the first one. They do wrap up the mystery at the end of this one, so that was satisfying. They did foreshadow towards what could be happening for book #3. I assume that will be in the works. But I didn't enjoy this one quite as much as the first one. The first one I thought it had a more clever premise, but this one was fun. And for mystery readers in the middle grade, they're not going to go wrong with this one. These characters are 7th graders, and there's 2 boys, 2 girls, and their friendship grows and develops. There's a little bit of slight flirtation going on. So students of that age who are starting to form an interest in the opposite sex are going to find that reflected in this book. So it was fun to read. I would say I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the first one, but it still was a fun mystery for middle grade. And then my last book for today is another middle grade. This one is different. It's called Kestrel by Joy McCullough, and it's a book written in free verse. So it is going to be fast to read. It is easy to read. It doesn't read really like poetry. So students who may be a little nervous about trying a book in verse, this would be a great one to try, because you could read it and it just will read very, very naturally, like if they were reading a prose story. So in this case, we have a girl named Kestrel, and she has grown up with a single mom, and they lived with her grandfather, who is her mother's father, all of her life, and she's grown up in her grandfather's church. He is a pastor, and he is very, very restrictive about how they use their time, how they are always doing church activities. Kestrel goes to the church that is she goes to the school that is part of the church, and so she has grown up and around this church community. And now suddenly her mother has taken her in the middle of the night without giving her a chance to say goodbye to her grandfather. And she has gone from California, I believe, to Montana. And the mother has signed up to work at a conservancy ranch. They raise dogs there that are specially trained breed who are track bears. So they're able to tell whether a bear has been in the vicinity recently or in the past. So this is to help improve the kind of human-bear interactions that are happening in Montana. So her mother is very excited about this. She really wants to explore this for herself, but Kestrel is afraid of dogs. And she didn't want to move. And she misses her grandfather and her whole life in the past. And so she's having a very, very hard time adjusting, and she doesn't want to adjust. Now, there is another character who's her age, who is also at the camp for the summertime. And so there's some interaction with somebody who is her age. But this story is about Kestrel, about her learning more about herself, about learning to face her fears, about understanding her mother, understanding the background of her family, how can she reconcile this new event that is completely, wildly different than the whole life she had before, and her mother hasn't really explained any of it. So there's a really kind of serious dynamic. However, the story is not all serious. Kestrel is narrating this story, and her point of view is really childlike. You know, we see things from her point of view. And of course, we have the animal interactions and other things that are happening on the ranch. So there is plenty of action happening. And the story, as I mentioned, it goes by quickly because it is short. So I really highly recommend it. It does delve into some deeper themes. So it's not just lighthearted, but it's not also super, super heavy to read this book. I really enjoyed it, and that's Kestrel by Joy McCullough. So that is about the first half of the books that I read during the month of June. And soon I will be presenting another video with the second half of what I'm reading. I've already read some really fantastic books that I'm going to share with you in that video. So I hope you return to Mystery in Middle Grade. I invite you to subscribe. And if you have any comments about these titles or want to chat about any other things, feel free to drop a comment and I will respond. So thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again.